Here today with Mike Saunders. He's the CEO of DigitLab. I just wanted to connect with him and pick his brain around the concept of building people community in the context of our digital world. So thanks for spending the time.
Pleasure.
So if I had to start this off, I think the first thing I want to ask you is, what is digital?
It's an interesting question because I think everybody has their own version, but for us and why we founded DigitLab and the work that we do is digital does two things. It accelerates competitive advantage. That's the biggest thing that technology's done for our society and for business over the last sort of 20 or 30 years. But on top of that though, because of the prolific nature and almost the redundancy of technology now, we've just connected so many people together that it become digital for me is more a conversation around people than it is around technology. For us, digital is that. It's the study of how people connect inside technological realms. I don't think it's going to impact. I think it has already, and I think the one particular area that's so evident is who controls the voice of the business. You've got this young millennial generation coming in who are digital natives, but I think there are two things that we normally speak about, and the one is access. So how do they access information and how do they access people? So boomers, the boomer generation, they access people through golf games, networking events, all of these things, okay? The millennial generation does that in their own way, but through social networks, through WhatsApp and Snapchat and all these different things. And so they're actually touted to be a more social generation, yet than the boomer generation, but they don't look it because it's all through this device.
Yes.
That they do these things. So but when you walk into an organization, we like ban Facebook or we ban them from certain technologies, and then we wonder why they're not succeeding. It's because we've taken the number one thing that people use to propel their career, which is their network, and we've taken it away from them. And so those two pieces in this idea of access and this worldview change in access is quite interesting, because this younger generation is walking in and saying, hey, we know how to succeed in this digital world. We're walking into an organization where where they aren't necessarily equipped with us. So they're not running cloud systems, they're not running social networking systems, they're not doing these things that can help us. So that's a systems conversation. The other one is more like a people conversation. And that's because of this hyper-connectedness to news globally. It's not unheard of for a young girl in South Africa, Durban, to look and understand the plight of a young person sitting in South Korea, or to understand the plight of the polar bear, and to see these things. So because they're hyper-connectedness to news, they're looking at all of this stuff and saying, "Sheesh, this previous generation, they've actually messed up," and so there's this cynicism that's being born out of this, that this generation is walking into our business with, where they're going, "I want to work here, but I'm not completely convinced you've got it all taped." So when you tell me I should be working 18 hours days to like knock us out, I watched my dad do that, and he's like on a second marriage now, and I don't have a great relationship with him because he didn't have enough time for me, and then he saved all this money and then lost it in the recession, so now he has to carry on working, which he doesn't really want to do. It wasn't his life plan, and so he's actually like this dream you're trying to sell me doesn't actually work, and I can see it, and it's close to me, and it's affected me personally. And so when I look at that, I'm walking into your organization challenging your norm, and that comes across as self-righteous, that comes across as rebellious, etc. But really they're just going, I need to test this, because I've seen that a lot of the decisions that society has made around the world are really impacting people negatively, and I don't want to be impacted like that. And that for me is a leadership thing. So that's about how do you communicate, how do you bring things together, how do you build the team up, how do you show them that common vision.
I mean, I suppose with the cynicism also comes a social conscience.
Yeah.
So it's around the fact of, from an HR or a leadership perspective, it's rather, how do we cater for the fact that they're cynical, and how can we win them over with the real?
Yeah.
And then how can we allow them to be the we instead of the I?
That's it.
And work at that.
Yeah.
Which leads me to this thing. Do you feel that digital can facilitate authentic connection?
Yeah, it is difficult. So I think my quick answer would be yes, it can facilitate authentic connection. The I'll premise it with this idea though that if you think about how much fake news is out there at the moment, and will be out there continuously, we often say to people, in a world of fake news, there's truth becomes a prize. And so what we want to try and come to grips with is this idea that if truth is a prize, then how do we find a way to kind of make sure that people see this authenticity?
Yes.
So for me, I just think that this analogy of like, if you're in a room full of people who don't like you, the one that likes you is the one you gravitate to.
Yes.
In a world full of fake news, anyone who's telling the truth, who's raw and honest, you're going to start gravitating to,
Yes.
because that's your prize.
Yes.
So it doesn't need to be pretty anymore, but I think the reality of the situation and the truth of it, and the honesty that sits within that is going to become a really big treasure in a digital community, because it's going to become more and more rare.